Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me.
What up?
What's going on, man?
What up, man? It's good to see you. Every morning.
You too, man. How's the morning treating you so far?
The morning started at 1:57 this morning.
Ooh, that's I woke up. That's too early.
I was hacking up a lung.
Oh no!
So I've developed allergies over the years, and it just seems like every year it gets worse and worse and worse. And thanks to Punxsutawney Phil, my allergies came early this year, just like spring. And here I am sounding like Phoebe in Friends when she has the cold and thinks she has a sexy voice. That's how I sound today. That's how I sounded a little bit yesterday. But, you know, we're grinding. That's what I texted you this morning. We're grinding.
You got that Phoebe Phlegm voice. That's all right. We're getting after it here on it's Wednesday, right?
It is Wednesday.
Yeah, that's right, because it's National Signing Day, even though Nebraska's only got like two guys we're looking at. That's fine. I will say, I know Schaefer said he didn't miss it. I will say I miss a little bit of the excitement of the old school National Signing Day. Like, that was a fun day.
Well, you didn't have to cover it like Schaefer.
No, for sure. Yeah, I was my favorite memories of it are just being a fan. And maybe you get a surprise here, a surprise there. This guy, you know, he does the press conference and he puts the hat on, then he takes it off and he's like, just kidding, I got the T-shirt on. We're going to Nebraska, whatever the case was, right? Like, there was some fun National Signing Day moments. You've got like Terrell Pryor just not signing with anyone until April or something. He was just like, nope, not doing it. We're fine. I thought it was again, it's nostalgia, like Schaefer talked about yesterday, but there was something to kind of, hey, everything happens on this day. You know, it's kind of like the difference between, the NBA playoffs where you have a series versus, hey, we've got a Super Bowl. It's the one day. You know, now it kind of feels like we have a series of recruiting events where we used to have a Super Bowl of recruiting, and today was that Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't even know what the schedule is for college football anymore. Like, when you can actually sign, when you can't, because it seems like there are no rules. And as we know, in the era of NIL, there is no rules. And now that NLI,
there you go.
Yeah, you know, we're connecting dots over here. Same type of deal where it's like, I don't even know if there is a rule anymore to when a coach can't speak to somebody, because you know, they get away with it behind the back of the NCAA, or if they get caught, it doesn't actually affect them that year or whatnot. So I know what you're saying though, because there's a buildup factor to that one day that is just so exciting. But you know, selfishly too, working in sports radio, it's nice having the early signing period because it gives you something to talk about in December. And then, you know, January rolls around and you're talking about different transfer portal moves. And now you're into February. And though it's not what it used to be, it's still something to talk about on a Wednesday, not during college football season. And we like those things.
Yeah, it's still a fun day for sure in December. It's less so now, at least the way Nebraska's kind of decided to operate. There are some teams that go in a little bit harder in the late signing period, which is today. I will say back in the day, we didn't feel as desperate for something in December because there were bowl games and, implications there. So I know that hasn't happened since you've been covering Nebraska sports as closely, but there was a time where that actually happened and there were football things to talk about in December.
Well, you know, it's funny that you say that too, because I'm convinced that the college football world changed for Nebraska and just for Nebraska, because they need this fan base to be feeling good at all points of the year. And so they had to come up with a new way to get Nebraska football fans excited in December when things weren't going right. So they said, hey guys, you know, we're gonna change up the entire format. You guys are going to still find a way to be off-season champs, and this is how it's going to be done. We'll spread it out a little bit more so it's not like you have to wait so long. And misery I know that's what TK calls the state that I live in now, but misery is no more in Nebraska when you have early signing period. Now, it'll still feel a lot better, though, if they can get to a bowl game and possibly win one.
It's true. Also, I mean, misery was no more once Dylan Raiola decided to tap into the chat and be part of the class. But no, I understand why they do it, and honestly, while nostalgically the 16-year-old in me that was at my computer checking, like refreshing the websites and seeing who was signing and refreshing. Well, Twitter didn't exist when I was 16, but just refreshing like message boards and stuff, trying to say, okay, this guy's. It's also, I think, National Signing Day was not just the Super Bowl for recruiting; it was also the Super Bowl for fax machines. It's the only day. It's the only day of the year that fax machines matter at all. Where I don't know if they started doing like e-signatures or stuff yet, because I haven't heard nearly as much about fax machines in the last few years, but it was always like, hey, got to wait for that fax to come in. And I'll be honest, if I was a, multi-million-dollar head football coach waiting on a fax machine, I would not feel good about that, because I am 36 years old. I've worked in an office for most of my adult life, and it's like dicey every time I try and use a fax machine, which is not often, by the way. But anytime I'm like, yeah, I probably need to fax this, I don't think it's even happened for like 3 years. But anytime, they used to happen a lot more back in like the 2010s. And every time I did it, I was like, this is like 60-40 at best. I got this right.
Well, it's funny because I don't know if I could pick a fax machine out of a lineup. So
it looks like a printer with a phone on
it. there you go. Maybe I just need to watch Draft Day again. I think they used a fax machine in that movie. No, not only that, I don't think I would even know the first thing about using one. I remember when I first found out how to use a rotary phone. I thought it was the most incredible thing ever. And also how impatient you had to be to dial like the 9 or the 0.
Yep.
You had to watch that thing spin all the way back. And I just go, oh, how did people live in the Stone Ages?
So I never really used, I mean, I saw rotary phones and things like that. We never had one in my house. But I remember some people, like kind of my parents' age, telling me, like, if somebody had a lot of 9s or 0s in their phone number, it's like you didn't call them very often. It's just like only in emergencies. We're not we're not wasting the time with like a 9900 number,
Ravi, imagine having to call 911. There's an intruder breaking into your house, and you have to wait for that first 9 to spin all the way back.
At least you're not in England where you had to dial 999. Just imagine just any day now. Just got to get it back.
That seems like a Family Guy episode where Peter is having his house like invaded in Britain, and he goes over to the phone, and Seth MacFarlane is making fun of how long that would take, and the intruder walks in and like watches like the dial spin all the way back, and then Peter does it again and watches it spin all the way back, and he turns around and he's like, hold on, we're almost there. It's something you make fun of.
It is something you make fun of. But yeah, the National Signing Day was the Super Bowl for fax machines. But I think they've moved away from them now, which is good. We've got better technology than fax machines now. I'm glad we've moved on as a society from the.
We've upgraded to X.
Well, to e-signatures, I think is what people use now, but that's okay. We do have a lot going on today, despite the kind of goofiness of our little opening part there. It is National Signing Day. There are a couple guys that Nebraska is still kind of in on. Shafe told them about us a little bit yesterday. We'll check in with Michael Bruntz at 9 today from Husker 24/7, see what he's got going for us in store at 8:30. So before that, we will talk to Kevin Sjuts at 1011 News in Lincoln. And then we're going to talk at 8:45 to Nick Athan. He covers Kansas City for ChiefsBlitz.com. They've also got a Chiefs Blitz YouTube channel that they cover the Chiefs on as well. So we did the 49ers yesterday in terms of previewing the Super Bowl. We're going to do the Chiefs today. And I will remain very professional and unbiased and ask only very legitimate questions. It's you don't have to worry about that. I'm taking my fan hat off today, and we're gonna interview Nick Athan from ChiefsBlitz.com like a true professional.
Hey, don't change who you are. Don't let the people tell you what you should be, Ravi. You be you.
And then, of course, at 9:30, we will talk to our friend Anna Bellinghausen of Hurrdat Sports. I've got a lot going on tonight. We've got Creighton plays tonight. They go on the road. Your Omaha Supernovas are at home tonight at CHI Health Center. So we'll talk to Anna Bellinghausen, and she's not even here. A lot going on. She's not even here, right? She's out at the Waste Management Open, one of the better golf events that gets put on, especially a non-major golf event, right? Probably the best non-major golf event, or at least the most fun.
Definitely the most fun.
Yeah. And that's what I mean by when I say best, because I'm not a hardcore golf head. And so when I say best, I'm just saying the most fun for me to consume as a non-golf guy.
Yeah, it's definitely the most fun because there's no rules to how you fan. Everywhere else, you have to act like you're walking into church. But at the Waste Management, it's, hey, you have your beer and feel free to throw it at any point in time. It's like, was that Providence's bench that did that a week or two ago?
I think so, yeah.
Because I think Fanta grabbed the video, which oddly enough, that's who Creighton is playing tonight. But yeah.
Dunk.
So Waste Management is something that I've always wanted to attend just because, it's funny. Somebody asked me, would you rather go to Augusta or the Waste Management? And I said the Waste Management, which is kind of bizarre to hear because Augusta is so
it's like revered. It's a,
well, it's just so hard to get into.
Yeah, it's exclusive.
And I said Waste Management, though, because I'm like, well, I'd rather have a good time.
Yeah.
I'd rather watch these golfers have a good time. When the Pinnacle Bank Championship was here over the summer, we were sitting at hole 17, and the idea of hole 17, the Hurrdat Sports Pavilion, was to be like a Waste Management hole. And it turned into that. They had a DJ, they had the open air suite to the far side, and it was a good time. And then when you talk to the golfers after each round, they're like, yeah, we couldn't wait to get up to hole 17. We couldn't wait to see all those people yelling and screaming. And it's like, more times than not, that's what people want.
Yeah.
Like, people don't want it to be so quiet. Yes, like in their backswing, you don't want to hear like, you suck, fill in the blank.
Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
But you do want to hear like constant crowd noise every now and then because, I always use this as the example. When you go to the driving range, are you sitting there thinking about every shot, swinging and hitting while you're by yourself? Or do you see people with AirPods in, listening to music, listening to something, trying to lock in to the moment? You walk up to the driving range at the Pinnacle Bank Championship, notice how many people have AirPods in. Like, people like not feeling like it's dead silent. It's kind of like, weirdos that, I call them weirdos because I don't sleep with a fan on. But like people that need that background noise when you're sleeping.
Yeah, the ambient noise in
right?
the background, yeah.
Like, I don't need that because I'm a psychopath. But there are people that need that. Like, my fiance absolutely has to have the fan on.
Yeah.
When she's sleeping. So I always think about that with golf. And when you're out playing around with your buddies, you have the speaker going.
Yeah.
You're playing music. Now, granted, nothing's on the line when you're playing with your buddies, but I think more golfers tend to enjoy that aspect versus the, oh my gosh, it's dead silent. People are all staring at me and my ball's in the woods. People surrounded it and I have to fit it through this little tree line. And, the best of the best can do it. We've seen Tiger do it all the time, but it's something that, I think we'll start seeing the game evolve in that way. Especially now with Live, joining in and other golf events like that. It's I know the PGA is all buttoned up and professional, and I'm cool with that because I like the rules of what the PGA has to offer. But I also think it's nice to kind of break away from old traditions.
Yeah, there can be a place for both, right? In golf. And I think as all sports leagues and sports events start tackling the challenge of people wanting to pay ticket prices instead of staying at home and watching games or watching tournaments or whatever, I think you're going to have to continue to improve the fan experience, right? That's that's the thing that the Waste Management Open has down to a pat, right? Is having an elite fan experience. That's what you hear all the time with, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, college games. People want to have a reason to not stay home. It used to be you'd go to the game just because you could. Anytime you could go to a game, you went. But for a lot of people, the experience is better at home now. So you have to give people a reason to go. You have to give people it's like you're going to see better angles on TV. You're going to see a clearer picture on TV. You're going to get replays and commentary, and commentary might not be great for everybody. Not everybody loves some of the comment. I'm just thinking of Matt Millen during football season. Like I not everybody wants to hear that, but you have to give people something they can't get at home, and that's the challenge that golf faces. And that they seem to have the formula. The question is, with the Waste Management Open, is that something sustainable across multiple events? Is it just kind of its own little silo in that particular event, or is that something you can recreate? That's where it gets kind of challenging, and we'll see. I assume the PGA will evolve some. I agree with you. They're going to stay pretty buttoned up in general, especially at their majors. But it's more distracting when somebody yells out of a silent crowd than just having constant noise. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if a crowd is totally silent and somebody says anything, not just yelling, they just say anything, it's more distracting than if you got kind of that constant buzz of noise in the background. So I think there's a way to do both, of have a professional event that doesn't bother the golfers and to have something that's fan friendly. Hey, if we can figure it out at the Hurrdat Sports Pavilion at Pinnacle Bank Championship, then surely the PGA can figure it out.
Well, and to add to that, because you make a good point, it's hard to make another event similar to the Waste Management without somebody saying like, oh, they're trying to be too much like the Waste Management.
Yeah.
And if you look at it though from like the Pinnacle Bank Championship perspective, which is sort of kind of the Korn Ferry Tour, I call it the AAA of golf, like AAA baseball. It's one step below than what the PGA is.
Yeah, because you can get called up basically. You do well enough, you get your points, whatever, you get called up to the PGA.
Right. If you're one of the top 25 at season's end, it may be 30 now. Ooh, you're testing me, Andrew. I only have to be. I don't even need you for this conversation, Ravi. No, whether it's 25 or 30, you get called up at season's end, and that's how you get to the tour. That's how you get your tour card. But since the Korn Ferry Tour is a different branch of the PGA, and there's nothing like the Waste Management on the Korn Ferry Tour, or at least that people that I've touched base with while trying to figure out if there was something like that last year, the Pinnacle Bank Championship can be that. And if there was enough traction here in Omaha, if there was more people that knew, hey, this was going to be a party, it's not just a golf event, it's going to be a party. Think about how many people in Omaha would show up for that, because this state shows up for fun atmospheres.
Oh, yeah.
And if they knew they were getting themselves into a rager, and that's what I really think the Waste Management is, an absolute rager of a party. Omaha, Lincoln, go all the way west, pull people in. This event would be bumping off the charts. It would be the most attended, and it would be the most fun. It's already the most fun, in my opinion, but it would be even more fun to kind of give it some sort of identity.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, and we're still 6 months off from the Pinnacle Bank Championship again this year, but this was one of the things that I appreciated and kind of learned about it while we were doing shows out there this year was, I've mentioned, I'm not a huge golf guy. I probably wouldn't go to, I would go to Augusta if I got the chance just because of the experience, whatever, stuff like that. But I'm probably not going to go to a random golf tournament for the golf itself, right? That's just not really something that I'm super interested in. But, one of the things that we tried to let people know about was, hey, even if you're not into golf, it's beautiful out here. You can walk around, there's plenty of stuff to do and eat and drink and whatever and hang out with the family. There's plenty of stuff to do, whether you want to make it a family experience or if you want to have it kind of be a party experience for you as well. So, I think you're on the right track there, that you have to offer. And again, kind of like what I was saying, you have to offer somebody a reason to go. Minor league baseball has done a great job of this, by the way. It is one of the things that minor league baseball is the best at, is giving people a reason to go to an event that they might not normally go to. Because for a lot of people, listen, I know that there's big sports nerds out there like us. There's certain events that we would go to for the sport itself that nobody else would think about going to, right? Like, and I'm sure we've both done that. But for the average fan, for just somebody looking for something to do, you have to give them something more than just like, well, hey, I mean, these are really good golfers. It's like, yeah, but if I'm not that into golf, like that doesn't really, I mean, and to go to be totally clear, to go to a non-PGA golf event, you'd have to be really, really into golf to be there just for the golf, right? You have to give people a reason to want to go. Pinnacle Bank Championship has done a really good job of that. Waste Management Open has obviously done a really good job of that as well. And then you've got stuff like the Super Bowl, which goes almost too far the other direction, where it's barely about the game at all. And we'll definitely get to some Super Bowl stuff, because I think, just to kind of tease it here, Andrew, I think there's some really interesting storylines in the Super Bowl, and there always is, right? There's always, stories of people overcoming things and really, like, heart-wrenching stories and emotional stories and all that. But I think there's really interesting football stories with this particular Super Bowl, because of the matchups, because of the coaches involved, because of the quarterbacks involved and where they came from. So that's something we're going to get to today, because I think that's a little unusual. And I don't know, because of everything else going on around it. Like, listen, we may have a Taylor Swift topic before the week's over as well. But because of all the other stuff around it, like the attention put on Taylor and Travis Kelce and everything else, and the fact that it's in Vegas, a Super Bowl's in Vegas, right? And they're making the team stay like 25 miles away to keep them away from the casinos, like,
and the people.
Yes, right. But I think honestly, mostly it's the casinos for the NFL. They seem super concerned about it. And it's like, well, maybe you should have thought of that before you A, put a franchise there, and B, put a Super Bowl there. But they're like, no, we'll just throw them out in the desert and it'll be fine. Don't worry about it, guys. But I think there's some actual really interesting football storylines here this year. So we'll get to that as well. There's also a really interesting, and I think I'd like to get to this next. There's a really interesting decision that was made about the status of college athletes and where and how they can be paid. Because you mentioned earlier, the NCAA has sort of been the Wild West, but apparently you drive a recruit to an NIL meeting and that's where you get a 2-year show cause. Like, it's been a bunch of lawlessness with these random rules kind of scattered in. I think a decision was made this week that may start to clear a lot of those things up. There might be another one on the way. We'll get into that next. As it's National Signing Day, we know NIL has been a big part of everybody, whether they signed in December or today. So we'll get into that next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We've got some great guests joining us in the second half of the show. And of course, once we get Anna here, got to do a little bit of trivia too, so.
And some picks.
We're going to do some Waste Management Open picks as well. Before we get to that, though, I kind of teased before the break that there had been some decisions made that could directly affect the future of college athletics, specifically with how and by who athletes are paid. And that was earlier this week, the National Labor Relations Board ruled that Dartmouth basketball players are employees of the school. And basically, if you're not familiar with the National Labor Relations Board, I don't blame you. I wasn't either. Had to do some Googling. Basically, it's a federal agency that exists to enforce labor laws, whether it's from the worker side, from a union side, from the employer side, whoever. So if somebody's violating those rules, they enforce them much like a court would for your regular laws and regulations and things like that. The reason this is important is because they're basically saying that Dartmouth, in this specific instance, because they're the ones that brought the case, is in violation by not treating the basketball players as employees. Now, if this is a ruling that stands, it would basically open things up for players to potentially either unionize it and collective bargain, or at least set the precedent that the universities can and actually should pay the players directly. Now, you put this in combination with a bill in South Carolina that exists for the purpose of legalizing schools, specifically the Clemson, South Carolina, Coastal Carolina, being able to be active in the compensation process, to pay players directly or be active in that process, which the NCAA currently prohibits. And I think we might be very much be on the front end of shoring up the NIL Wild West that we keep hearing about and keep hearing guys talk about, where, because right now it really is a total crapshoot, right? There's really no rules. There's really no guidelines except, you can't be directly involved, but we don't really know what that means. And so having rulings like this, if they stand and if they go through, basically put in place the framework for schools to be directly involved with the NIL process. I don't think we're going to see schools directly pay players. What I do think we'll see is schools being in charge of the NIL process. And Matt Rule's kind of hinted at this before, where players are kind of out there on their own. They don't get a ton of guidance. They don't get a ton of help navigating what's real and what's not, and what's a promise and what's actually deliverable. If the schools can be involved directly, they can say, hey, this is from a person that we trust, that we know. You could probably even have employment contracts at this point, where not only for NIL, but maybe for national letters of intent being a little bit more like an employment contract as well. Now, that's beneficial for the player side for sure, but it would also probably limit some of the movement if you're talking about actual employment contracts and not kind of just these handshake deals like, yep, I'll give you $1 million to come to school here and advertise for me, whatever, right? So that I think I think we are possibly, and TK in the YouTube chat says the same thing. He says we're going to see the college athletic union sometime in the future. If there's one thing that unions do, it's lobbies Congress, NIL dollars to Congress. But, and that's fair. But what it also means is if we've got a college athletic union, then there will be a uniform set of rules in which that's negotiated, much like the players' unions in our major sports leagues. They collectively bargain and everybody plays by the same rules. To me, that is a major plus if they're able to get that into place, because that way it's not just this whole crapshoot. Now, listen, people are same like in, we just saw Kansas City sign Bobby Witt Jr., right? They generally have not spent that kind of money because they're not a big market team. They haven't made that kind of money, right? But so there's going to be variations of that. Nebraska is going to pay people more than Iowa State, probably. That's just how it's going to go. But everybody will be operating from the same set of rules, which I think is a major, major plus. And maybe, at least in college football, maybe the first time ever that's happened.
We'll see if everybody operates by the same.
Well,
rules.
fair. There's at least a chance.
Right. We'll put an asterisk by that, just for now. But no, you bring up a lot of good points there. And the big one for me, and I've thought about this for a long time, and it comes on the heels of having a fiance that ran in college but didn't have a full ride scholarship, but we attended a private school. And I've always said this, as great as it is to play a sport, participate in an activity, whatever that may look like, the practice hours, the travel time, the working conditions, like all those type of things that athletes have to go through, the mandatory study halls, things of that nature, like that's a job, right? Like when you're a college athlete, that's your job. For me, I didn't go to school to play a sport. So I was able to have a job, make a little side money, all that jazz, and figure out how to pay for school that way. Like I officiate basketball games, soccer games. We talk about me being a ref all the time on the show. I had jobs in the summer. I had my job at the local ESPN station in St. Louis, all these type of things. I was constantly working and constantly bringing in money so that I could pay for school. Meanwhile, when you have an athlete, let's just say you're on scholarship and you make the school, it costs $15,000 to go to, but your athletic scholarship per semester is only, $5,000.
Well, baseball is a great example of this, right? They don't have enough scholarships for their roster. And you see, especially in certain conferences in the South, especially, these are huge. These are money-making enterprises. I get college baseball doesn't make money everywhere, but just because, like you said, partial scholarship does not equal partial hours.
Right. And so when you're putting in all full-time hours, a full-time job, and you're still not feeling that sort of reward, that's why I think these conversations are starting to happen more and more. Because, at some point you have to look at it and think, man, if we broke down their hours per week, it is much greater than 40 hours. Much higher, because you're doing 2-a-days, you have team dinners, you have team meetings, you have film, you have all of these type of things. And if you're not playing a premier sport like football, and you are playing a sport like baseball or cross country or whatever that may be, you're not seeing the revenue that will get you paid in full. And as you said, like I put the example out there for $5,000 per semester. And if you went to a $15,000 school, you're only paying $5,000 at that point, which is great. And maybe that's more in line with what we see with college education today. But there's plenty of people out there that don't even get close to that number.
No.
That barely reach $2,000 for the full year to play their sport.
And most places cost way more than $15,000 if you're not in state.
And if you're breaking it down, and you're looking at, okay, this person's getting paid, let's just call it 50 cents, right? Like 50 cents a day to do this activity. Like, yes, they're doing what they love, but they're struggling at the same time because they aren't being treated as quote unquote employees. So like that's their job. Again, to come full circle, an athlete in college, like your job is your sport. My job in college was an actual job outside of the school.
You got paid for.
And so, moving in this direction, I think is a good thing. I think it's a long time coming. And I think it will be a huge stress reliever as we see the rising costs for education just keep going.
Yeah. And, we've only got about 30 seconds left here, but it's a really important, I think, conversation, especially for the non-revenue sports, right? Because you mentioned all those responsibilities you have. The one thing you didn't mention that is absolutely required of every one of these athletes, actually classes, right?
Yeah.
On top of all of that, you still, and listen, online,
you gotta go to school.
In terms of time management and stuff like that, you get a little bit more flexible. You still have to take a full class load and be passing those classes to stay eligible. And I get they have tutors and help and stuff like that, but man, it is a minimum full-time job, and you're probably putting in a pretty good amount of overtime as well. We will continue and wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Coming up next. Welcome back as we wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and bright and shiny. The other thing that you want to see is your Omaha Supernovas. They are back in action tonight at the CHI Health Center against the Vegas Thrill. That's a 7 p.m. first serve. You can get your tickets over at supernovas.com. You can also get some merch over there as well. We saw Anna wearing that sweet Supernovas hoodie earlier this week when she was filling in for Andrew. Make sure you get over to supernovas.com. Get tickets. You can get schedule information. You can shop around the team store as well. The Vegas Thrill at your Omaha Supernovas tonight, 7 p.m. at CHI Health Center. Make sure you get out and support the Supernovas. If I don't see another 5-figure attendance, we're going to have a stern talking to, people. Let's keep this up. We had over 11,000 in both of the first 2 matches. Let's make it 3 in a row before we send our Supernovas on the road next week. That is tonight at 7 p.m. All right, Andrew, want to get into a couple other topics here before we dive into our Super Bowl storylines at the top of the 8 o'clock hour. And one of those was something we hinted at there in the last conversation, was the Kansas City Royals finally decided to spend a little bit of money. And by a little bit, I mean a whole lot of money, to the tune of, $288 million guaranteed over the next 11 years to Bobby Witt Jr. And listen, don't get me wrong here. Bobby Witt is a very good baseball player. He is somebody worth spending money on. The surprise here is who did the spending. This is not a franchise that has a reputation for opening up their pockets very often, and this is sort of a break from how we've seen the Kansas City Royals operate. And I know you did a little digging and had some, because it's not like this franchise has been terrible for all of our lives. They won a World Series, I mean, almost 10 years ago now at this point, but in 2015, that's relatively recently. And I know you did some digging as to some of the salaries on that team, because I mean, this is an enormous contract for the Royals to hand out. And I think you've got some examples of just how much above and beyond they've gone in this situation.
Well, so pull out your calculator for me on your phone, Ravi,
Yeah,
and do some simple division for me. Take the $228 million or whatever it was.
288, I think. Yeah.
288. And was it 11 years or 13? Yep.
Well, so it's 11 guaranteed. He can opt out.
And then he goes to 14, I think is what it is.
He can opt out after 7, or they can opt him in after 11. So it can go up to 14 and 300 some million, but it's 288 for 11.
Okay, divide that for me. And how much per season is Bobby Witt Jr. being paid if it was broken down just evenly across all 11?
We'll call it 26.2.
26.2 million. Okay. So I was talking to my brother last night because he was helping me come up with some trivia questions. And I'm like, man, Bobby Witt just got that big deal. I wonder if we could do a trivia question about who was the last highest paid player for the Royals. And we were like, well, it's probably Salvi. It just makes a lot of sense that it was Salvador Perez. And if you break it down per season, Salvi got I think a 4-year, $82 million deal. But it wasn't as long-term, but it was a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Now, I was like, okay, let's go back to the 2015 World Series and see what each guy was making per year. I have the top 5 players in front of me. Ravi, who's number 1?
My first guess would be Alex Gordon.
And that is right. How much did he get paid?
I'm saying definitely sub 20. I want to say sub 15. I'm going to say 12.
14.
Okay.
Yeah, you were pretty spot on as you were going down the list. Then you have 1 more position player and 3 pitchers. The next position player, also an outfielder from that team, got paid $9.5 million that year.
Is that Lorenzo?
No, Lorenzo actually, if I remember correctly,
was he still on early money at that point?
He was still on early money. He made $2.7 million that year.
Okay, so he was like in arbitration.
I mean, can you imagine making $2.7 million? I mean, disgusting.
I mean, what am I?
Yeah,
how am I even going to?
It's not even worth it. Why would you play baseball for $2.7 million?
Point, what are we even doing here?
So next on that list is you want one more guess? He's the right fielder.
Yeah, I'm blanking right now. Oh, is Billy Butler?
Alex Rios.
Oh, was Billy Butler DHing?
Billy Butler was... Dude, Billy Butler, I do not see on this list.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, they got Rios from the Blue Jays. Is that right?
Oh, man, dude. I think he played for the White Sox at one point, too.
Hold on. I got to deep dive Alex Rios real quick. Because I know he pops up as a.
So he started with the Blue Jays, then he went to the White Sox. They got him from the Rangers, though.
Oh man, I didn't realize that was like the very end of Alex Rios' career. Okay, so that's why he was making money, because he'd been in the league for 15 years at that point. That makes
and then the next three are pitchers. Two of them, I believe, were starters, and one was their closer.
Is that okay? So the closer was Soria.
No. Think about. Gosh, I don't even know how old this guy was, but he played for the Rockies. He also played for the Cardinals at one point.
Oh man, I thought I could have sworn it was Soria. Shoot, give me a second here. I'm going to figure this out. This was
like he rose to fame in Kansas City, and then he started getting big money and just fizzled out after KC.
Oh man, who was their reliever? Or their closer? Was this oh God, was it Greg Holland?
It was Greg Holland. Yeah.
Oh man,
he got paid $8.25 million that year.
Okay, wow, I did not realize they were paying Holland that. Okay, so you had Holland was because they had a couple young guys. Was like Volquez making big money on that team?
Volquez was not. I mean, he was making $7.5 million. But so he was sixth on that list, but not in the top five.
Did they didn't they acquire Cueto midseason? Johnny Cueto from like the Reds?
I want to say they did.
But they were only paid like half a salary. So
correct.
So are we doing, was Chris Young on that team?
Chris Young, not in the top five on the team. He only made $675,000.
Oh, that must have been one of those end of career deals.
So one guy, and he was in the news for the wrong reason last year. In 2023.
I don't remember. So I know
Jeremy Guthrie.
Oh, Jeremy Guthrie. I was gonna go like Luke Hochaver, but I was like, I don't think he's getting paid at that point.
Dude, he got paid $4 million that season.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, he was one step below Hosmer. The one that you're missing, another starting pitcher. I think he was a starter. I remember him as a starter, so he's got to be a starter.
Was Giordano making money at that point? Ventura?
No, $950,000.
Okay, I thought he was on rookie money. I'm out of starters then. If that's
he's a southpaw.
I got it's not Wade Davis, was it?
It is not Wade Davis. Jason Vargas.
Oh gosh.
So that's your top five that season. Gordon, Rios, Guthrie, Vargas, Holland. That team won the World Series.
Yeah, and only like two of those guys are any good.
Was that the year they were the wild card team too?
Yeah, I think they were a wild card both years that they went to the World Series, 14 and 15, I think.
I got no room to talk. The Cardinals were a wild card when they made the World Series.
Hey,
11-1.
You don't even worry about that. Just, listen, you get in the party. It's like those playing teams. You get in the party and then you start dancing. All right. You don't have to just because you're in Dayton doesn't mean
But it is crazy to kind of like look back at that roster. And I know that, over time, and this is almost 10 years, that you can basically assume that the range and salary is going to be much, much higher. But the fact that somebody of the age of 22, is that how old Bobby Witt is? 23?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, this will be his age 24 season. He was 23 last year.
So Bobby Witt Jr. was the number one prospect in college baseball for at least a year. He may have been it for 2 years. So it makes sense after the season we saw last year because he took a huge leap from year one in the league to year two. I mean, he went up 0.2 in 0.02 in batting average. His numbers went up with that as well. So it makes a lot of sense to see Bobby Witt get paid. The Royals did a great job of finally doing it, though, because at some point you have to establish who you're going to build a team around. And the Royals haven't been able to do that over the years. Now that they've done it with Bobby Witt Jr., because there's no salary cap in baseball, you can start pulling guys in from all over, and you got to just start paying people. Like, there's money there. You have money. You wouldn't own the team if you didn't have money. You have to start paying people.
Well, and I mean, this is a whole different conversation for a different day, but I don't really buy into the poverty cry that all these small market teams, like, revenue sharing exists. I understand that it's cheaper to operate in those cities. Like, I'm not here for it. I'm not ready to hear all that. Like, pay your players, like, be responsible, pay your players. That's funny though, that the 2015 world champs were not even in the neighborhood of what Bobby Wish did. Coming up next, speaking of a sport that does have a salary cap and has dramatically impacted how the Kansas City Chiefs have put their roster together, we've got some Super Bowl storylines we want to get to next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, which means you can catch us wherever in the world you're at, just like our friend is from Northwest Arkansas checking in on the YouTube chat. We appreciate everybody that's listening or watching in, regardless of where you're located, and we appreciate our friends over at the Warhorse Sportsbook and Casino. We are right smack dab in the middle of the time for you to make your picks in the $100,000 pick challenge, prop card challenge for the big game on Sunday, part of the Warhorse Festival of Games. You should have already been qualified with your entries to get into the prop card challenge and into the $20,000 grand prize drawing. All you need to do now is make those prop card picks and validate your entry. Go to the casino in Lincoln, swipe that member's card. You have to be a Warhorse Rewards member. Swipe that membership card and hit that validate button, and you will be entered in. You win 25 for 25 on that prop card challenge. You'll have your chance at $100,000. That is the Warhorse Festival of Games from our friends at Warhorse Sportsbook and Casino. This contest for the Warhorse Casino in Lincoln only. The Omaha location not participating, but just make that short drive down to Lincoln if you're not already there and get those entries validated. Andrew and I believe Friday, are going to go through our prop cards.
That we are. And you know what's funny? And it also kind of stinks. And I'll just be totally transparent. Ravi and I will not be eligible.
Yes.
Unless Ravi goes to the casino for us.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes. And, as friends of Warhorse, there might be a little bit of a,
right. Well, and on top of that, though, I have been building our entries up on the Festival of Games page, because you can also, I found out you can get bonus entries if you play the games that are on the page.
Oh,
so
fun.
You talk about $50 sports bets will get you an extra bonus entry. Well, if you actually play the little arcade games that they have on the Festival of Games page, you can get or be eligible to receive an extra entry. So I have 11 entries built up for us.
Honestly, I'm surprised that number is not more with all your sports betting, but that's okay. Yeah, go to warhorsecasino.com if you've got any questions about how to validate your entries, how to make the prop card picks, anything like that. Warhorsecasino.com has you covered. But we will get to our prop picks on Friday. But right now, I do want to talk about the big game on Sunday, because there's a lot of big storylines for the Super Bowl as well. Besides, obviously, a championship on the line. I asked this question of Rohan yesterday, our Niners Nation guy, that I asked him kind of who this meant more to legacy-wise in terms of Kyle Shanahan or Brock Purdy. But there's another side to that question, too, because, Patrick Mahomes is kind of goat chasing right now, right? He's sort of in early LeBron career mode here in terms of trying to chase down some goats. Andy Reid's legacy starts to get really interesting if you have 3 Super Bowls. He's got another Super Bowl appearance with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's one of the best offensive minds we've ever seen, one of the best quarterback mentors that we've ever seen. If you look at his track record with his quarterbacks, I mean, we got the best football out of Michael Vick's career from Andy Reid. We got Donovan McNabb was only really good with Andy Reid, even though he was still reasonably young when he went to Washington, was not the same type of player. He got the best football out of Alex Smith, and then obviously the crown jewel of his quarterback mentoring career is helping turn Patrick Mahomes into what he is. And that's not to take anything away from any of those guys. They're all super talented, obviously. But we've seen, and we talked about it yesterday, being super talented doesn't get the job done. Like, there's a lot of other things that go on, circumstance, coaching, a lot of things go into that. Andy Reid has a really good track record of getting the best out of his quarterbacks. So what is, and one of the questions that got asked of Andy Reid yesterday in kind of press availability was if he's thinking about retirement. And his answer was a little ambiguous. I mean, he talked about how his parents always told him, like, when you know, you'll know, and how he's like, today is not that day. It's like, yeah, today might not be, but Monday might be. Sunday night might be. I don't know. It felt very non-committal to not making that decision of be like, oh, yeah, I'll be back next year. I think there's a chance, and this is maybe one of the biggest storylines because of how that resume that we just read off of Andy Reid. I think there's a chance that if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, he might kind of pull his own John Elway and ride off into the sunset on back-to-back championships.
It wouldn't surprise me either. And here's why. Yes, he can cement his legacy by doing it in back-to-back seasons, but like, think of the party that he's joining if he were to do that, right? You'd be joining Belichick, Noel, Don Shula, Jimmy Johnson, Mike Shanahan, Vince Lombardi. Are those Hall of Fame head coaches, Ravi? I can't remember.
Yeah, that's a pretty good list and a pretty exclusive list. I mean, there's a lot of really good football coaches that do not crack the list of guys that have won back-to-back.
And look, only 4 have won multiple Super Bowls. Well, I say more than multiple Super Bowls, which is the number 2.
Yeah, so
Belichick has won 6.
Yeah.
Noel has won 4, and Walsh and Gibbs have won 3. And so Andy Reid could be joining that list as well and put himself in such a prestigious group that, it kind of makes a lot of sense to say, you know what, I'm going to put on my Hawaiian t-shirts and instead of, joking around in press conferences in Kansas City, I may be popping in on interviews on big time ESPN shows or Hurrdat Sports Radio from Florida in my retirement home, wearing my Hawaiian Chiefs shirt and eating one of the best burgers in town, because that's what Andy Reid likes to do. I mean, he's a fun loving grandpa, right? Mm-hmm. That is just a really smart football coach. And at some point, you have to decide, are you going to ride off into the sunset, like you said, a winner, or are you going to test your luck and possibly get caught being in a spot too long?
Well, and that's kind of the interesting thing about the situation with the Chiefs, right, is it's only going to continue to get harder because of how much money Patrick Mahomes makes, because it's a salary cap sport, because of, they've already had to let guys like Tyreek Hill go. They have already, you're staring down the barrel of Travis Kelce retiring as well, probably sooner rather than later. Not saying it's going to be this year, but Travis Kelce isn't going to play a ton longer. And even if he tries to hold on a while, he's not going to continue to be Travis Kelce. You're not going to be able to run the entire offense through him, basically. Is Isaiah Pacheco real in terms of somebody you can build an offense around? I don't,
He looks like it right now.
He looks like a really nice piece. If he's the feature part of your offense, what does that look like, right? Like,
that's the difference.
Is he a Christian McCaffrey? Because probably not. There's really only one of those, right? That's the chances just statistically of him being one of those guys are pretty low, even if he's a really effective running back in their current offense. Can they figure out how to draft a little bit better? Because they've struggled with some of their draft picks at those wide receiver spots. They've done really well on defense, right? But as these guys continue to get older, because they're successful, they're going to get paid. And it's going to be harder to keep more and more of these guys, because keeping Mahomes is obviously he's under contract, but it's a non-negotiable, right? Like, so it's the rest of the guys that you have to figure out around. And it continues, that's part of the reason we don't see a ton of back-to-back championships. That's part of the reason we don't see extended runs of success, right? Like, we thought the Seattle Seahawks, when they made back-to-back Super Bowls, and Russ Wilson's not making any money yet, and so they're able to build their team. But listen, eventually Russ had to get paid. Eventually they had to start paying those guys on their defense, and all of a sudden things got wonky on them in a hurry, and they walk out with one championship. Chiefs already have them beat there with getting 2. If they win on Sunday, obviously they get their 3rd, but man, it gets really dicey in a hurry in a salary cap sport to keep things together and try and sort of rebuild on the fly. They've done a pretty good job of it this year because this team is way different looking than the one in 2019, 2020 that won the Super Bowl against the 49ers team. But man, it'd be really, really easy to see Andy Reid saying, you know what, I've done what I set out to do. 3 Super Bowls in back to back. That's a very exclusive group for me, because college or football coaches kind of land in 2 categories for me. You've got the guys that seem like lifers, your Belichick's that's like, I don't know what else I'm going to do with my life. And you've got the guys that's like, oh, they seem like they have a real life outside of this. Andy Reid seems like a real life guy. Right. And maybe he is, maybe like you obviously have to be obsessive to have that type of success anyway. But he seems like a guy that does enjoy things outside of football. And maybe it's not fair. Maybe it's just the personality of Bill Belichick makes it seem like he doesn't really enjoy anything. But he doesn't seem like a guy that's going to coach himself into the ground. That just doesn't seem like the vibe I get from Andy Reid. If they go back to back here, I think Kansas City should be a little bit worried that he might call it a day.
I think it's easier to be that type of guy too, though, when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, for sure.
You don't have to worry about what's going to happen next season from a quarterback standpoint, because every single year you're like, yeah, I got the best one in the league. So all I have to do is maybe be 1% better in my play calling to make it a little bit more unique for Mahomes and a little different for opposing defenses. But I think you brought up something way early on in this conversation to open up the hour about legacies that I wanted to expand upon.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned Brock Purdy's validation and Kyle Shanahan's like hope to seal the deal. Like those are kind of the 2 big ones. Purdy's validation is pretty self-explanatory. And then Shanahan's too, you look at his Super Bowl collapses in his career and think, oh man, if he can't get over the hump now, how do we identify Shanahan going forward?
It's going to start to be a thing. Like if he doesn't win this one, it's going to start to be a thing of like, oh, can't win the big one, can't get over the hump. It's like, great coach, but can't really get it done. He's going to turn into kind of Marv Levy with the Bills. Like that's kind of the danger for Shanahan here.
I think there's 2 more players though,
okay,
that can get added to this legacy list, like whose legacy is on the line. The first one is Christian McCaffrey. And you mentioned him when you were bringing up Pacheco there, because McCaffrey is trying to join his father in the Super Bowl victor club. And if McCaffrey gets a Super Bowl victory, he's in discussion of best running backs of this generation, if not, all time, based on what he's been able to do. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler. He's 2-time All-Pro. And he's among the league's active leaders in all-purpose yards with 10,728. That trails Zeke and Derrick Henry, but a Super Bowl ring has eluded both of those guys. So if McCaffrey can get that, that's why I really believe he's the best running back of this generation. And he would be able to solidify that if the 49ers can get that done on Sunday. The other player, Trent Williams. If you think about Trent Williams, what does he have, or what does he not have? The only thing he doesn't have is a Super Bowl ring. He's praised as one of the best left tackles in the game, and that's well-deserved. I mean, he has Pro Bowl honors in 11 of 13 seasons, first-team All-Pro selections in each of the last 3 seasons. The Lombardi Trophy is the only thing missing for this future Hall of Famer. A win would give him that final accolade. And then what do we like to call those careers? We like to call them storied careers. And the ultimate ending to somebody's story is hoisting the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the season. Those 2 guys, I think, are keep an eye on guys this Sunday, because, their legacies are already built. But in terms of making them the best of their position, this trophy, this Super Bowl could be what they've been just missing over the course of their career.
It's interesting you bring up those two guys because we don't a lot of times think of non-quarterbacks when we're talking about legacy, right? That's not something that we do a ton. But Christian McCaffrey especially kind of sticks out to me because, Trent Williams, I think his legacy is pretty set. This is, to me, maybe the difference between one of the best tackles of all time and maybe some people claim that he gets a Super Bowl. We see how dominant he's been this year. We see how bad San Francisco was without him during that few game stretch where they actually lost a couple of games this year. And you go, okay, maybe he's the best tackle of all time. Like maybe he's the best that we've ever seen in terms of what he's done. So that to me is kind of a resume builder. But McCaffrey's interesting because you could almost make the argument because of how much better this team got when Christian McCaffrey came over last season. I think you can legitimately make an argument that he's the most valuable player on this team. I also think you could make the argument that he's the most valuable player in the league.
Ravi.
I know Lamar Jackson's probably going to win it, but if you look at what this team is with and without Christian McCaffrey, you can make a pretty easy argument that Christian McCaffrey is the most valuable player to this team. And you would kind of, listen, you're always going to look at, hey, if we don't have a quarterback, we don't have a shot, right? If we don't have a quarterback, we're not winning a championship. But a guy like Christian McCaffrey can maybe change the type of quarterback you need, right? Because you've got a Lamar Jackson in Baltimore who does everything. And I mean everything for that team offensively. And we saw in the AFC Championship, when part of that game isn't quite on point, they have a real hard time moving the ball, putting up points, doing the things you need to do to win ball games. So yeah, there is something to having a guy like Lamar Jackson, but if you've got a guy like Christian McCaffrey that makes you not need the overall, ball dominance. I kind of using a basketball term there, right? But he's Lamar Jackson's almost like a ball dominant point guard where he's got the ball all the time. He decides everything that happens, where Brock Purdy's more kind of your traditional distributor point guard. It's harder to find the ball dominant guys in football, the guys that can do everything for you, but sometimes it might be harder to win with those guys too, because if they have an off day, your whole team is kind of in trouble. That's the beauty of Patrick Mahomes, is he's both. He's literally both guys. That's why he's in the GOAT chasing conversation, and neither of these other two guys are. But Christian McCaffrey changes the type of quarterback you can win with. And that's his value to this franchise, because I think Kyle Shanahan, when they drafted Trey Lance, was looking for a do-it-all ball dominant guy, right? I think he was looking for his Lamar Jackson. And instead, they get Christian McCaffrey, and he ends up with his version of the distributor point guard, the guy that gets the ball to everybody that needs it, the guy that gets the ball to guys in space. Like it changes the type of guy you can win with. Christian McCaffrey is a really interesting point on the legacy conversation, I think, for that reason.
And then on the other side, you look at the Chiefs, right? And not just on offense, but defensively, nobody expected this result with the roster turnover that we saw this year from Kansas City. Nobody. Everybody was writing off the Chiefs defense, and throughout the season too, when the offense wasn't performing and they ended the year 11-5, well, you could look at it and be like, yeah, there were a couple of drop balls, but also you see 11-5 and you're like, yeah, well, the Chiefs defense isn't as good as they've been in years past, so that you're going to see some of those things. Like, no, they've morphed into a juggernaut after seeing what was on paper at the beginning of the year to where they are at now. Guess how many points they are holding teams to per postseason contest?
Ooh, so it was 10 against the Ravens. I don't remember what the score of their first game is. I'm going to say like 14.
Yeah, 13.7. No. Guess how many points they held teams to during the regular season?
So it's a little bit more than that. I'll say 18.
17.3. You are basically in the ballpark.
Yeah.
That level of dominance, we don't talk about how much that erases pressure on Mahomes in the offense. That's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
So the point I'm making here is the evolution of the Chiefs defense may be the most important piece to their Super Bowl run this season.
Oh, it absolutely is. They're not in this neighborhood because the offense has taken a step back. I mentioned it earlier. They've struggled with some of their offensive drafting a little bit, although Pacheco and it seems like Rashee Rice are both going to end up being hits. But the defense, they have crushed it. Their drafts on defense have been on point. They've gotten a ton of really impactful players, and it's been the reason they've been able to survive the loss of a guy like Tyreek Hill, that they've been able to survive the wide receiver drops that we were talking about earlier this year, that they were able to survive, Kelsey not having a typical Kelsey season throughout the entire time. He's playing great now, and he's had some other stretches where he was playing great, but this isn't a 17-game juggernaut that he's been able to put together like he has in years past. That defense is the story outside of Mahomes for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think they've started to get the credit they deserve, but I'm not sure that people appreciate just how dominant this defense has been. And they had as much to do with Lamar Jackson struggling in the AFC Championship game as Lamar himself did, or the play calling of Todd Monken. But the Chiefs defense, you're right, is a enormous factor in what we've seen here in terms of the Chiefs' ability to get back to this game. Last thing I want to get to here, speaking of defenses, everybody knew about the 49ers defense coming into this year from last year. Obviously, they had DeMeco Ryans last year. He leaves to go be the Texans head coach. They bring in Wilkes, who was the interim in Carolina, and they were good for a lot of the year. They've got all the pieces you could possibly want. They've got the rushers, they've got the linebackers, they've got the back end. They haven't played very well in the playoffs. That is a major storyline here, is can the 49ers fix their defense? Because it's not a talent issue. You look at the roster, you look at the guys they have on the defensive side there, and you would be hard-pressed to find better personnel. So that leaves one of two things, and the 49ers seem to think it's an effort issue. They watch the tape. They're like, hey, that's unexcusable. We got to have 11 guys going hard at the same time. There's also a possibility that it's a schematic issue, that it's a technical issue, right? And I think they're hoping it's not that, because that's a little bit harder to fix. If you've got 11 guys playing for the Super Bowl, it's pretty easy to get juiced up and ready to go and playing hard the whole time. It's a little bit harder to have a schematic fix in 2 weeks when you have to go play Patrick Mahomes on Sunday. So I think they're hoping that it is a hustle, a effort issue. That remains to be seen. It'll be really interesting to see what the 49ers defense looks like, because, I mean, it was two different teams, first half, second half against Detroit, right? Terrible defense first half, incredible defense second half. They're not going to be able to have a terrible half against Mahomes.
Well, nothing much more to add to that, because you hit the nail on the head, other than, think about the last 5 seasons of football for the 49ers. The 49ers have been the standard. Mm-hmm. That defense has been the standard for the league, what people have been trying to reach, and that's what has led them to reaching the playoffs 4 times and winning 2 NFC championships in that window. But you're right. The biggest thing here is, can that stingy defense contain Mahomes and what he's been able to do? And if they can shut down that talented offense and keep the foot on the gas, the offense for the 49ers doesn't have to be excellent.
No.
They can just be really good, and that defense can carry them to victory.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, we'll do our prop picks on Friday. We'll continue to preview the Super Bowl throughout the rest of the week. But right now, we've got our guy, Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. He will join the show next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We are brought to you by our friends at Dyer Law. If you've been hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it. No matter what you're dealing with, call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529 or visit Dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's DYER.law. And joining us now, another trusted professional on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is our friend Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Good morning. Happy Super Bowl week.
Happy Super Bowl week, Kevin.
I know, it's exciting, Kevin. Speaking of the NFL real quick, former Nebraska great Rex Burkhead just retired from the NFL this week. You put out on Twitter that he was the 8th nicest Nebraska football player you've interacted with. I got to know who's number one.
Number one is a piece of cake. For me, that goes to Sam Hahn, an offensive lineman who played about, 5-7 years ago. He was good friends with Sam Foltz.
Mm-hmm.
I've become friends with Sam after his playing days, and his family, wonderful people and just good people. But, this is a true story. I've kept a list all throughout my career of just the interactions I have. It's not just about who's a good player and who creates a good soundbite. Who are the guys who give us extra time? Who warms my heart? And I like just keeping track of that. And, Rex is number 8.
So, okay, give me your best Rex Burkhead story then, because I've heard a lot of people talk about how kind and how great of a person he was during obviously his time here at Nebraska and keeping that connection with Nebraska. So, what's your Rex Burkhead story?
Everybody goes straight to Jack Hoffman and his interactions with Jack.
Mm-hmm.
I would go on his senior day. I was really excited to get the shot of Rex being introduced to the crowd during senior day at Memorial Stadium. And I was hanging back. I wasn't right by the gate where the players come out. Instead, I was around the 50-yard line, and I happened to be right next to his mom and dad. And just in conversation, I realized, oh my goodness, this is Rex's mom and dad. And I paused and I told them, I was like, hey, just so you know, I work for the CBS affiliate in Lincoln. I see Rex on a fairly regular basis, and he's just an awesome guy. And you guys have done a wonderful job raising him because he has never big-timed anybody. He on multiple times probably could have just shoot off one of my really ridiculous questions, but he never did. And the mom and dad, their reaction to my interaction, me sharing with them how much I've enjoyed Rex, they got emotional, and all of a sudden, I got emotional on the field for Rex Burkhead's senior day. So one of my great memories of Rex wasn't actually with Rex. It was just my quick interaction with mom and dad. And then, of course, I was right next to them when Rex came out and waved to the crowd. And then he's hugging his mother. He's hugging his father. And it was a really powerful moment. And for me, adding to it was just the conversation I had with his parents. It was good stuff.
Man, as I'm sitting here, Kevin, I'm wondering what your standard is for grading on who's the nicest player in Nebraska versus that story right there. Because they can't be far off. 1 to 8 can't be that far off, right?
I'd say 1 to 20 is pretty tight. I mean, it's hard to rank, who is 5, who is 8, who is 20. I will notice though, I think I've maybe lacked a little bit. There might be some guys over the past 3-4 years that aren't on the list that I was revisiting it after Rex announced his retirement. I had a couple of guys pop in my head. I was like, you know what? They should probably on there. I think as of right now, my list is not quite 30 players deep, but I know I have past 20. I'm somewhere in there. And I'm pretty steadfast in Sam Hahn being number 1. Sam Foltz is in my top 5 as well. Zachary Bowman. Absolutely love Zachary Bowman. And Rex Burkhead, of course. He's one of the greats. And for me, Rex is a legend. And look at what Rex did for the university and what he did for Team Jack. My criteria is really just about how do you treat me? How do you talk to me? Players that interact with us when they're coming on and off the field, and they're not like, ooh, dirty media, he's got a camera on his shoulder, get away from me. If you could just be cool and know I'm a person, you're on the list, baby.
That's a pretty low bar, Kevin. I got to ask, though, so who are some of the players you were thinking about over the last few years that you're like, maybe they deserve some inclusion?
They wasn't on my list.
I'm sorry, you cut out there. Who was that?
Martinez.
Oh, yeah.
Adrian he is such an awesome guy. And, despite the product on the field, again, this list is to highlight people that treat others well and are just really good dudes. And Adrian is definitely a good dude. And I really respect everything that he stands for and he did at Nebraska. So I think Adrian is the first one that came to my mind, and I was like, I've got to get him on my list.
Now, Kevin, if you have a good list, if you have a nice list, you have to have a naughty list. And so I'm not going to say you have to share some names, but I'm sure you know some jerks over the years as well.
I'm not sharing the names, but this did come up in conversation with some media members one time, probably within the past year. There are a few that just did one of two things. One, they acted with the media like all of us reporters are stupid. And there are some that really just don't want to be there. And that sometimes can kind of hit the wrong way, if you know what I mean.
So you've got the Bill Belichick's that not interested in talking to the media.
Sure. There was a day that it was before Nebraska left for one of their bowl games. And I was working on Christmas Day. I went to go get video of the team arriving to the stadium before they took off. It's a standard, 20 seconds. Hey, look, the Huskers are headed to wherever they're going at the time. And I was running the camera, and it's Christmas Day. Who wants to be working on Christmas Day? But I had to, and it was fine. One of the players saw me, and he goes, dude, come on now. And I go, hey, Merry Christmas. And just that interaction for me is just like, I'm just trying to do my job, man, and I'm not trying to get a scoop on anything. I'm just trying to show the players are reporting on Christmas Day, and they're headed off to the bowl game.
Totally fair. We're talking to Kevin Sjuts, 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, a couple minutes left here with you. What are some of the things that either you're about to cover this weekend or that you covered in the last few days that have stuck out the most to you? I know that 1011 News did a kind of a little story on the Glock family from Wahoo and the record that was broken there. Is that one of the more interesting things you've covered this week?
Absolutely. Jason Glock is an absolute legend in Wahoo. He led one of the greatest dynasties in Nebraska high school sports with Wahoo Hoops, and now his son is breaking dad's record. That's pretty awesome. So we had that earlier this week. I'm gonna throw you guys a curveball on this. One of the things we're covering this week that doesn't get a ton of press, and some people might kind of roll their eyes at this, but it is amazing video. High school state bowling championships. We had a kid last night bowl a strike for Seward. They won the Class B team championship, and as the pins go down, he turns around to the crowd. He puts his hand behind his ear like he's a WWE wrestler. It was awesome. So we've got state bowling this week. And, of course, we'll be keeping tabs on Nebraska basketball, the Huskers with a huge one tonight, playing at Northwestern, trying to still get that elusive Big Ten road win.
The turnaround was, who do you think you are? I am.
You can't talk about bowling without that.
Kevin, as you look towards that big Nebraska ball game tonight against Northwestern, I mean, there's definitely easier road games left on the schedule, but what do you think their chances are of breaking through against Northwestern tonight?
It's a tough one. Northwest, I don't know what happened. Maybe it was the renovations at Welsh Ryan Arena, but that looks like one of the more intimidating places to play in the Big Ten now. If you watched any of their home games, the place gets rocking, and Boom Bowie in particular, he's like a different player at home. He's a good player, all Big Ten first teamer, in my opinion. But when he is in Evanston, he is just off the charts. Elite defender, and the way he gets to the rim is pretty good. I just feel like he plays so much better at home. But Nebraska locked him up when they played him in Lincoln last month. So I don't know that Nebraska comes out of tonight with the victory, but I think that they have some opportunities for road wins later in the schedule. It's just Northwestern right now, they're in the midst. There's like a 3 or 4 way tie for 4th place in the conference. Nebraska and Northwestern are both of those teams. And the way that this season is gone, I think you just naturally have to give the advantage to the home team.
That's Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, enjoy the Super Bowl on Sunday, boys.
More
thanks, Kevin.
Sports Radio coming up next. And we are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by Nick Athan. He is from Chiefs chiefsblitz.com. They also have a YouTube channel of the same name. Nick, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
We are doing well. You know, we talked to a 49ers writer yesterday, and one of the things that I asked him was about legacies that are on the line in the Super Bowl on Sunday. Obviously, it's a very different situation between Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but I will ask you the same question. Out of Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes, who stands to gain more from another Super Bowl victory between the quarterback and the head coach?
That's a really good question. I think the legacy in this game means more to Patrick Mahomes than it does to Andy Reid. Now, that doesn't mean that Andy Reid doesn't want to win it. The fact that his players for the second Super Bowl in a row are in pads in Super Bowl week practicing tells you where Andy Reid's focus is. But this is all about, you know, the legacy talk about Patrick Mahomes and the comparison to Tom Brady. And, you know, I've said this, you know, the last couple of months, probably multiple times. You know, Patrick Mahomes is chasing one man, Tom Brady, and Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and Allen and all these other quarterbacks are trying to chase and Hurts trying to chase Patrick Mahomes. So he's kind of like, he's at an elite level on his own. And I think listen, he hated losing that Super Bowl in Tampa Bay where he ran all over the field and his offensive line was depleted. And he never forgot that. He never forgot that feeling when Joe Burrow beat him in the playoffs in Kansas City. And for what he did last year without Tyreek Hill, and he comes back this year with an offense that isn't all that great. So to answer your question, I think this legacy game and this game is far more important to Patrick than anybody else.
Nick, you know, legacy talk is a fun story, but there's plenty of other great storylines in this game. And I think people wrote off way back at the start of the season one storyline that should be revisited right now, and that's the evolution of this Chiefs defense. If that wasn't seen this season, are the Chiefs in this spot today?
The Chiefs don't even win the AFC West if it wasn't for this defense. And nobody is more shocked at the success of this defense when you look at snap one against the Detroit Lions through, you know, the last snap against the Ravens. This defense has just played lights out. It's special. You know, I'm an old dog. I still remember the 69, 70, 71 Chiefs. Those were the best two defenses I've ever seen in Kansas City. And I'd have to put this one pretty close to that, if not better, considering, you know, the physical nature of the athletes that they're going up against now is far different than it was in the 60s and 90s. And I think, you know, this defense is just, it's been a shock. You know, I mean, they got Charles Menahue. Unfortunately, he's not going to play, but he came on. You know, Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, Mike Dana came out of nowhere. I'm saying, cut this guy in training camp. He's terrible. And he carried the team, this defense, for like the first 5 or 6 weeks. Willie Gay, Nick Bolton, and the ultimate glue guy, Drew Tranquil. And then you look at the secondary, and it's the best in the NFL. And it's just a marvel that they played at such a high level. They've dealt with injuries. They've dealt with, having to rotate guys constantly. And they just find a way. And they are the story of this football team. And if the Chiefs are going to win Sunday, it's the defense that's going to have to deliver it, just like it did against the Ravens and the Bills.
We're talking with Nick Athan. He covers the Kansas City Chiefs for ChiefsBlitz.com and also Chiefs Blitz on their YouTube channel. Nick, you know, you mentioned the dominance of this defense, and you're absolutely right. But as you look at all the weapons the 49ers can throw at you, is there any area that gives you a little bit of place of concern where the matchup isn't something you love?
Well, I mean, obviously you've got to stop Christian McCaffrey. You know, the Chiefs played Christian last year in San Francisco, I think it was, and that was his first game after the trade from Carolina. And, you know, remarkably, he played really well in that game. But, you know, everything goes through him. And I think if the Chiefs are successful at stopping the run. Now, I say this from somebody who's watched this Chiefs defense get torched against certain running backs. But when they've had to dial it up and fill gaps and bring pressure, they've done a really good job of stopping some really good running backs in the postseason. I mean, the Dolphins had the best running back tandem The Bills had a great running back, and the Ravens had all those running backs, and the Chiefs just found a way to stop them. So for me, the biggest key is this, make sure that Christian McCaffrey is contained, keep him under 75, maybe 80 yards rushing, force Brock Purdy to throw the football. And, I am not as concerned about, the defense overall and going into this game facing all those weapons, because I just think the Chiefs defense is at such a high level right now that it's going to be difficult, I think, for the 49ers to score points and to get enough plays in that's going to offset the juggernaut of the Patrick Mahomes offense.
Nick, we had some people in the chat today bring up Tyreek Hill. Think he's feeling any regret leaving KC in Mahomes' prime?
Yeah, I think that I think some of his comments have come back to hurt him a little bit. But of course he is. He's never going to win a Super Bowl in Miami. Tua is never going to deliver the goods. Tyreek's already indicated that when his contract is up in a year or 2 more years, he's going to retire. So yeah, I think he has regret, but he went for the coin, and he has every right to. I will never ever tell an NFL player that I'm upset with him for going out and taking generational money from a team that was willing to give him $125 million. And I would do it, you would do it, anybody would do it. But yeah, I mean, what the Chiefs accomplished last year without him and what they're accomplishing even this year without him. And there was a lot of talk. Oh man, only if we had Tyreek this year. Well, where was all that talk last year? So the bottom line is, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's upset that, but he's got his coin. He's got a lot of problems off the field. So I think the Chiefs made the right move when it's all said and done.
Nick, you mentioned that offense, and at times over the course of this year, it hasn't looked the best, but over the last handful of weeks, Travis Kelce's really started to play dominantly again. Isaiah Pacheco's looking good. You've even gotten some decent play out of that much maligned wide receiving core. What have you seen that's allowed the offense to start to gel in a way that did not seem possible earlier in the season?
Well, I think they dummied down the offense. That's just the best way that I think I can put it. They were rotating so many receivers. They were trying to get everybody the ball. Andy Reid was in denial that, he needed to ride, Isaiah Pacheco in the run game or rely on that. And so they just kind of decided, okay, we're going to be a running team. We're still going to do, play action. We're still going to take a couple of chances down the field, but we're not going to go, full board. We don't have Tyreek Hill. We don't have all these things, and we have to work with the guys that got us here. Rashee Rice, listen, all the talent in the world. He's a surprise that he never hit the rookie wall. It's kind of a surprise he's gotten better and better as the season's gone on, and that's really helped him. So you run through Kelce, you run through Pacheco, and you have Rashee Rice, and you have Kelce. You throw in a little MVS on a good day. You got Justin Watson. They've got some pieces that, okay, we're going to take what the defense gives us. We're going to have long drives. We're going to have 5, 6, 7-minute drives. We're going to try and get rid of, score touchdowns and not field goals. And they just, since the Bengals game, excuse me, they just put it together, and they just simplified things. And Mahomes has accepted that, and Andy Reid's accepted it. And, and Nagy's, the offensive coordinator has accepted it as well, because he's done a terrific job. I mean, Matt Nagy is kind of a run first, pass second. That's kind of always been his MO. And he did that in Chicago and was very successful for a period of time as the head coach of the Bears. And they finally just said, after that Raiders loss and being embarrassed and delivering, a lump of coal to 78,000 fans, they just kind of said, okay, this is what we are. This is what we have to be. And they did it against the Bengals. They did it against the Dolphins. They did it against the Bills and the Ravens, and they're going to probably do it again against the 49ers.
Nick, as I sit here, I used to live with a Packers fan, and his biggest knock on the Packers was they never drafted a number one or a first-round wide receiver to give Aaron Rodgers what he needs. And I kind of think about that with the Chiefs a little bit, with how that offense is aging out. When Kelce leaves, if Rashee Rice doesn't keep hitting the marks that people are setting for them, is Mahomes one of those quarterbacks that doesn't need a first-round talent on the outside, and he's in that exclusive group? or once Kelsey is no longer a Chief and some of those pieces aren't there anymore, do you think we'll start to see some struggles possibly?
It's possible. I mean, this is what I think about the receivers. I mean, I go back to the AFC Championship game against the Bengals, and they were at full strength, and they lost Juju Smith-Schuster, they lost Kadarius Toney. They were playing with wide receiver 5, 6, and 7, and they lost. And they lost Hardman as well. And Mahomes is in the third and fourth quarter throwing to MVS and receivers 5, 6, and 7. And what happened? They won that football game. I don't think it matters who's around him. I think, and that's clear this year. I mean, seriously, you look at this roster. I mean, it looks like Kadarius Toney was going to be the guy. Richie James, who I thought was a terrific player, was going to be that guy. Justin Watson, MVS, all these guys had really strong off seasons. They had good camps, and they had good preseasons. And they just kind of all fell flat with the drop, lack of concentration, the penalties. And then Patrick has to deal with 2 offensive linemen that kind of struggled, for a lot of the season. And to me, it's just like, it doesn't matter. I mean, I said this last week on another show. If Patrick Mahomes wins this Super Bowl Sunday, he's the GOAT. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. He's the greatest quarterback in the NFL that we will ever see. And it isn't about the number of Super Bowls. It's the fact that he will win 3 Super Bowls with 3 completely different teams, 3 completely different offensive personnel outside of him and Kelsey, which is pretty important. But if you look at it, it's like there's only 5 guys left from Super Bowl 54. And there were only, I think, 12 left or 11 left last year. And now there's, 4 or 5 or 6. It's remarkable. And a lot of these dings are on offense. And, when Kelsey hangs it up in a couple of years, yeah, we're going to see the change. But, maybe they draft a top flight tight end this year and they groom him for a year or 2. That's entirely possible. So I think if you're a Chiefs fan, you look at Mahomes and you look at, it's in our human nature. This is unprecedented time in Kansas City. I mean, I went 50 years without a Super Bowl. I mean, I get it. This is crazy stuff. 4 Super Bowls in 5 years and winning 2 of them so far. And you just look at all this and you think, well, when's the shoe going to drop? I think as long as you have 15, I think the shoe's probably not going to drop till he decides to hang up his cleats. That's just me. I think he's one of those generational talents that is just so driven and so remarkably prepared and so remarkably organized. And this year, if you look at him, forget anything you've seen on the field, he has spent time coaching these receivers. He spent time coaching the linemen, the tight ends, the backs. He has invested so much time in making sure that they understand what he's thinking and what you have to look at when I take the ball in my hands and I'm retreating in the pocket. And I think that's a remarkable accomplishment.
That's Nick Athan from ChiefsBlitz.com. You can also find the Chiefs Blitz on YouTube as well. Nick, we appreciate your time. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me in, guys. Appreciate you.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me, and we are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. Bruntz, what's going on?
So much. What's up?
Oh, we're just living the dream over here, doing a little NFL Super Bowl talk. How's your world today on a relatively quiet National Signing Day?
I can't imagine it's good after the Oakland news.
Which one?
Oh man, just maybe the news of the mayor coming out in Vegas saying like, yeah, don't come. See you later.
I'm okay with that.
Well, I know you're an Oakland guy, but how do you know if your team's even going to be playing this year?
Well, they'll play this year.
Are you sure?
The lease says they have to. But
next year,
beyond that,
yeah,
not my problem. But yeah, no, today's quiet. It's really quiet, which is just kind of how what are we calling this? The second signing day?
Late signing day? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if the first one's early, this one's late, I guess.
Yeah. Signing day part
on
two.
time.
Part two.
Yeah, that's just kind of the way it is now. I mean, you're waiting on a couple decisions. Matt Rule's going to talk because he hasn't in a while, and you don't have the normal early February stress, which isn't a bad thing.
Bruntz, with the relative lack of stress, there are a couple decisions that Nebraska is waiting on here. I know the big one is Keona Wilhite. Seems like everybody feels pretty good about that. I've been searching. It doesn't look like we've seen an official commitment from him. Are you expecting that to be that one to go Nebraska's way, though?
On Wilhite?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're in a good spot for him. They also just picked up a commitment from Kamir Prescott. So if you guys want to do like a breaking news sound or something like that, you're welcome to. But no, I mean, I think with Wilhite, they're in a good spot. Things have kind of been trending towards UCLA like early in last week. And then I think, the news with Chip Kelly basically interviewing for every job that's available didn't do him any favors there. So I think Nebraska's in a good spot. He'll announce this afternoon at about 2:30, somewhere in there. And I think Nebraska stands a good chance to get him.
Bruntz, as you kind of evaluate this day as a whole and you wrap your head around what is left of National Signing Day, where else are you confident? Where else are you hesitant in terms of commits, offers, signees, Nebraska football, things of that nature?
Well, I mean, I think with kind of today, I mean, you're putting the 2024 class to bed. I mean, it's kind of been in bed for a while. I guess you're just going to tuck it in at this point. But I think, what we've seen and over the last couple of weeks, and I think Matt Rule did this last year too, a lot of the visits that he and his staff have made over the last couple of weeks, I think are really instructive about the direction that the 25 class is going to go and the direction that the 26 class is going to go. I mean, I think what they've done is with the February signing period being so quiet, they've basically worked ahead. They've identified the guys at the top of their board for the 25 class, and that's where I think you saw a lot of their efforts being focused. So, I think, right now, at least according to 24/7 Sports, that 24 class sits at number 18 in the country. And, I think there's still, room for them to grow as a staff. I mean, I feel like we've been saying it for the last decade, but I mean, if they are able to kind of put it together on the field, I think you're going to start to see even better results on the recruiting trail as well. But I think they've done a nice job. And I think, with the way the recruiting calendar is now, these last couple of weeks are much more about, hey, let's see if there's the best available player out there right now, see if we can go get him and work ahead on those future classes.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. Bruntz, you mentioned that 2025 class, and weirdly enough, Nebraska's already got a decommit from the 2025 class in CJ Simon, who was part of that class for all of about 2 months. What do you know about that situation and how that played out? Both, I guess, his commitment on the front end and his relatively quick decommitment on the back end here that we saw, I believe yesterday it came down.
Yeah, last night it happened. I mean, he was kind of a guy that Nebraska identified early, a real kind of, tight window, really quick kid, had been pretty productive as a junior. I guess it's fair to say the commitment kind of came a little bit out of the blue. It felt a little bit early. But I think with Nebraska and kind of the way they're recruiting right now, I think they kind of want the spot. I mean, I think it was probably a mutual thing. I think he's going to have more opportunities too. So, I think, if you can kind of do the soft breakup now and let everybody kind of go their separate ways, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, the other thing to remember too, and I think this bears following in the 25 class, when he committed, you didn't have Dylan Raiola in your class. And I think that addition coming when it did, I mean, I think that kind of introduces you to a little bit wider pool of wide receivers. I think that's fair to say. So I'm curious to see as the 25 class goes along, if Nebraska is able to kind of benefit from that recruitment, because you didn't really have that opportunity in December to bring in a bunch of guys and really kind of have him peer recruit for the class. So I think you will see some benefit of that in the 25 class.
Bruntz, before you officially shut the book of the 2024 cycle, I want you to open it back up, scan across the page. Outside of Dylan Raiola, who's the most impactful commit in your mind that has you saying, if anyone is going to make an immediate impact, it's this guy?
I'm trying to think. So I lean more towards the offensive side of the ball. I think one guy, this is going to be a long answer for a short question. I think a guy that we're not talking about enough in this class is Ja'Cory Barney. He was in high school in Florida, was a quarterback, running back, wide receiver. I think he might have played a little bit of defensive back too. And with the ability to enroll early, to focus on only wide receiver, I think he's got a chance to get in that mix early. I know that's a tougher position, I think, than most people assume, to get on the field and play right away. But I think that, to me, is the position that has a little bit more of a wider road to potentially get to playing time with. So I think that's one direction I would go. I mean, Carter Nelson to me is a little bit of the wild card, because Nebraska doesn't really know how they're going to use him. And if he was just a straight tight end, I would say, you might have a little bit of time there to wait. But I think he's got a chance to get in there a little bit sooner than what a lot of people assume coming out of the 8-man ranks. I mean, I think from what he showed in the two showcase games, the All-American Bowl and the Polynesian Bowl, I think I don't know that the learning curve is going to be quite as steep as what people assume. So those are two guys I would probably lean towards right away of having some kind of impact.
Bruntz, I'm glad you brought up those kind of all-star games, because typically, people don't put a ton of stock in those, but it seemed like for Carter Nelson, because he had not really played any organized 11-man football, it seems like we're putting a lot of value on his experience in those two games. Maybe also because it's a totally different level of competition that he faced in some of the smaller classes in Nebraska. Is that kind of how you perceived this? Because I'll be honest, I wasn't really thinking of Carter Nelson as a guy that could have an instant impact last year until these all-star games. I was like, maybe he's coming along a little bit faster than we thought.
Yeah, it's everything that he did in high school is extremely impressive. I mean, the thing to me that's always, a little bit interesting with his highlights even, and I don't know if it's the competition he played or just, what he was asked to do, because, I mean, he basically did everything. Mm-hmm. It always seemed to me like he was always moving at like 3/4 speed. And you were kind of always wondering, like, what does this look like if he just absolutely lets it rip? And I think there was a lot of intrigue with, how he was going to adjust. I mean, the thing is too, is a lot of guys don't have that level of competition every day in their high school careers. I think people kind of forget that. But, I think with him, it was like, okay, is he going to, be really dialed in, accept the coaching? Is he, going to be overwhelmed? How is it going to affect it? And I from talking to people, they really liked what he did. I think he impressed people with not only, what his ability is, what the athletic traits are, but also just his mental approach to wanting to kind of learn everything, because it was all new to him. So I think that helps. I mean, I think, if a guy comes in with the right attitude, I think that matters almost as much as just pure athleticism when you're talking about getting on the field as a true freshman.
Bruntz, especially locally, what have you really liked about this staff's efforts to control their own destiny, never really feeling like they're behind the 8 ball against other schools?
Well, I mean, I think we've talked about this. I mean, I think the mistakes that the past staffs have made is that, they have not recruited local prospects as though they're from Iowa or Kansas or Missouri or Florida. I mean, I think you can't anymore assume that just because a kid's from Nebraska that he grew up a Nebraska fan, although I think the majority of recruits in the state are still very tied into Nebraska for various reasons. I think they're also offering earlier and just starting that relationship. I mean, I think before there was maybe a hesitancy to offer early. And I think when you kind of go down the list of what Nebraska's done offer-wise in state already, I mean, you've got, I think, 7 or 8 guys already offered in the 25 class. There's a few in the 26 class. There's a 27 offer out. I mean, I think there's going to be more coming in that 26 class relatively soon. So I think that, to me, is a sign that, like, okay, they're not going to just, assume much about in-state prospects. And, I think, Ed Foley's trips around the state, I think there is value in that. As much as everybody snickers about the food pictures and stuff like that. But I mean, I think it's a sign that, they're going to be in the state and not just showing up at a school's doorstep just because they have a recruitable athlete there. And, the last thing on that, you look at the coaches who are involved with in-state recruiting. It's not just like, okay, this is Ed Foley's gig. Like, you've got Tony White in at Miller North and at Westside. You've got Rob Dvoracek at Westside. You've got, Terrence Knighton making stops at Omaha North. I mean, the other assistant coaches who have other recruiting responsibilities are also making themselves very visible in Omaha and in Lincoln. And I think that's been a really big change. And I think, for a lot of coaches in the state, they kind of wanted to see if the staff was going to walk the walk. And I think so far they have.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. Bruntz, you mentioned a couple schools there on Ed Foley and Nebraska staff's little tour that I think people are keeping a really close eye on in that 2025 class. Obviously, Christian Jones at Westside. You've got Cade Vermoss and Pierce Mooberry at Millard North. I mean, if you had to, we're talking a lot about betting this week with Super Bowl and props. If you were a betting man, how many of those 3 do you think end up at Nebraska?
Of those 3?
Yeah.
I mean, I would it's not a first inning parlay, but I mean, I would say Nebraska's got a really good chance to get all 3. I mean, you've already got Vermoss in the class. I think they're in a really good spot with Pierce Mooberry. I think my crystal ball on 24/7 Sports has him going to Nebraska. And, with Christian Jones, I mean, even though you had the changeover in staff, I think they've done a really nice job of kind of strengthening that relationship really quickly. And you've got guys from Westside that are already at Nebraska, making sure that they're, leaning on him. You've got guys that are going to be coming to Nebraska who are also going to be leaning on him. And, it's kind of, cliche, but I think it's kind of true. I mean, I think with recruiting, you follow the visits a little bit. And I think he's been at Nebraska something like 8, 9, 10 times, something like that. So, that matters in my mind. So I think they're in a good spot for those guys. I think they're in a good spot for a number of the local kids. I mean, I think that 25 class, you've already got 3 commits in state in that class. I mean, I think it's going to be another one where you could see maybe a third of the class be in-state prospects again. And I think that's a good way to kind of build a nice solid foundation for a recruiting class when you can keep those guys home.
Bruntz, now you have my mind on baseball after bringing up a first inning parlay. I'm like fiending over here. I'm ready for baseball season to get going so I can place one. And unfortunately, I can't place one in college baseball, but I did want to get your thoughts on one thing about Nebraska baseball because especially last year and maybe into the year before, Nebraska hasn't really owned the state of Nebraska. Omaha's had their number. Creighton's had their number at points, but Omaha no longer has Mike Bovee. Creighton has seen some turnover as well. Is this the year Nebraska regains the state?
It's a good question. And by the way, you can bet on college baseball, as I understand it. You just probably don't want to go too heavy on it. That's what.
Well, no, I know I can bet on college baseball. I just don't know if I can bet on first inning unders in college baseball.
I don't know if they have all the exotics on the college baseball betting board.
Yeah, you go to Cincinnati and see how much of your money they'll accept there for first inning parlay.
I'll just ask Alabama's former baseball coach.
No, I mean, I think when you kind of look at Nebraska the last couple of years, a lot of their issues that they kind of had with roster depth showed up in midweek games. I mean, even last season, they struggled. It wasn't just Omaha. They struggled against the entire Summit League. And part of that was you just didn't have enough options in your pitching staff that you could go to kind of get things going. And, I think that was something that they really wanted to address in the offseason. I think when you just look at the number of pitchers that they have that they feel confident in, I think that will help tremendously. And, I think sometimes too with those midweek games, they're kind of just bare knuckle emotional games. And I think the way that this offense is at least on paper drawn up to be, I think they're going to be able to force the issue a little bit more on offense. I mean, last year's team was a group that if they got up on you early, they were going to just beat you to a pulp. But if it was a 3-2 game in the fifth inning, that wasn't a real comfortable thing for them. So I'm eager to see if the changes they've made roster-wise and in kind of approach in some areas helps a little bit more with the midweeks. I think what Nebraska's also done is I think they've scheduled a little bit more aggressively with some of their midweek games. I mean, there's not going to be this feeling of like, which I think sometimes happens with midweeks where it's like, it's not a conference game. That's where our focus is. I mean, I think they understand that if they're going to do anything postseason wise, they've got to get a lot better in those midweeks. And I think a lot of it was just they didn't have very good pitching depth the last couple of years to be able to go in and just win those games.
Bruntz, before we let you go here in a few minutes, obviously Nebraska baseball kicks off the season a week from Friday, so we'll check back in with a little more baseball talk next week. But tonight, the men's basketball team hits the road again against Northwestern. As you look at this game, as you look at the way Nebraska's season is wrapping up with the final handful of games here, how are you feeling and how kind of desperate are you starting to get in terms of finally getting one of those conference road games?
Yeah, I mean, this would be a good one to have. I mean, I think when you look at what's left out there, I mean, I would not to, go all Nebraska against Purdue, but I mean, the last couple ones feel a little bit more gettable than this one. But I do think that, that this would be a really nice win for Nebraska. I think it would come at a good time too, because I mean, they've been playing better basketball recently, but you're kind of entering that home stretch where you need to be playing good basketball and kind of starting that stretch with a win on the road against a pretty good Northwestern team. I mean, I think that would do a lot of good for Nebraska in a lot of ways. And the thing too, Northwestern's coming into this game kind of in a similar fashion where it's not necessarily their last stand. They're also a team that kind of needs something good to happen. So Nebraska's going to have to play really well. They're going to have to really kind of take care of their business on the glass and play good defense. But this is a sneaky big game with, I think, a lot of upside for what it can do for Nebraska's resume and kind of just their approach the rest of the year.
Bruntz, not just their road record, but just their record in general. What does that have to look like for the Huskers, for you to comfortably say the Huskers will go dancing with this total?
If they get to 11-9 in conference, I feel like I would be feeling pretty good at that point. Certainly who the wins are against, how they happen, all that stuff, that matters. But I feel like if you kind of got to that point, you'd feel okay about where things are. And then maybe you're, maybe just playing for seeding in Minneapolis, you get another game up there or something like that. But that to me for about a month has felt like the magical number for Nebraska is if you can get to above 500 in conference play, they should probably be okay in my mind. But I mean, what do I know? I thought that 18 team was probably a team that could win a couple games in the NCAA tournament. They ended up having to travel in the NIT. So I'm not good on the bracketology usually, but I think 11-9 is the number in my head.
All right, Bruntz, a little out of your wheelhouse here, but I like to stretch your expertise a little bit as you're, we're in Super Bowl week here. You have a Super Bowl pick for us?
Well, I'm rooting for the 49ers. I mean, I think that's pretty much a given with the two teams involved. But I don't know. I mean, I think it should be a pretty good game. I mean, I'm not expecting a blowout either way. I'm sure that just because of the way things work, I'm sure Kansas City is probably going to win. So I'll be rooting for the 49ers, and I'm sure that the Chiefs will get some late call that they shouldn't get, that the Chiefs always get. So hopefully the 49ers are able to do something there. But I think the Chiefs win, but I'm rooting for the 49ers.
You and me both, Bruntz. That's Michael Bruntz, Musker 24/7. Bruntz, we will talk to you again next week.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Hey.
Coming up next, we've got Anna Bellinghausen from Hurrdat Sports here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Anna Bellinghausen, our Hurrdat Sports colleague. I want to tell you about our friends at the Team Jack Foundation. Currently, they are funding 13 projects collaborating with national institutions such as the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and Columbia University. Of course, they've got their largest project, or one of their largest projects to date, with the University of Nebraska Medical Center and the creation of the Nebraska Childhood Brain Tumor Program. They've raised over $12 million to date and counting, and the whole reason they're doing this is to find better treatments for kids fighting brain cancer and one day find a cure. The treatments currently used are almost 50 years old, and they are highly toxic to the children. Even if they survive the brain tumor, they're often left with lifelong issues and deficits due to the toxic treatments that are required. The Team Jack Foundation is trying to find a better way, and they're trying to find a cure. If you want to get involved, go to teamjackfoundation.org. They've got events going on. You can donate directly from the website, and there's all sorts of ways to get involved. Make sure you check out teamjackfoundation.org. Anna, how are you this morning?
I'm great. I'm just getting ready to leave for waste management tomorrow, so I'm pumped up.
Cam, is her mic on?
It sounds like Anna is like at the waste management.
Right now,
yeah, I'm yelling from afar.
There we go. Yeah,
there she is.
We had a FedEx delivery right at the last second there, which is perfect timing. So
that's all right.
Buzzer beater FedEx guy came to the door.
Getting in under the wire there. I saw him peeking in. I was like, but I'm on the radio. There's not a lot I can do here. Anna, you're heading out tomorrow to the Waste Management Open. Have you been out there before, or this first time?
This is my second time.
Okay, you went last year?
So I'm a veteran now.
Are you what was your favorite part about it last year?
Not seeing any golf was my favorite part. Just hanging out in the sun. Unfortunately, they're having like this weather event called the Pineapple Express. It's also a raunchy 2000s movie, but they're having this like tropical sort of storm from the Pacific Ocean. It's been moving over through California, if you've seen all the flooding. So it's been raining in Scottsdale, which happens like twice a year. And of course, it's when waste management is happening.
Wait, so they actually call the real name for the weather event is the Pineapple Express.
It's called the Pineapple Express. Yeah.
I had this conversation with Avery a few weeks ago.
About Pineapple Express.
No, about them making up weather things. But between
It's real.
the polar vortex and the snowquakes
Oh yeah.
and the ice jams and now the Pineapple Express, they just make things up.
No, it's real. I thought it was a joke too until I looked it up, and it's a weather term. It's also a 2008 film with Seth Rogen. So
And James
That
Franco.
it is.
Yep.
That it is. And it means something totally different in that movie.
Well, it's also an event, but it's in a different way. Anyway, well, I hope that you don't get too much rain while you're down there in with the Waste Management Open down there in Arizona. But that would be a little ironic that
it is ironic.
the 2 times a year that it rains down there. It's like, don't worry, we'll get Anna out there and have some bad weather. That's tough. That's a tough look for you.
I know.
Showered in beer.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll just hang out the 16th hole and rinse and repeat.
There you go. So you're heading out on Friday. Do you have like a game plan that how you're gonna attack this thing this year?
So we're going Friday, Saturday. Last year we only went out Friday, but Saturday is usually the most fun day because that's the most amount of people that go. Sunday could probably also be fun, but it's Super Bowl Sunday, so we're going to skip out on the tournament the last day, even though that could be the most fun to see who wins and all that. But
can't miss the Super Bowl.
I know we're going to watch the Super Bowl, of course, so we
obviously
can't miss that. But
Well,
yeah.
Well, Anna just said she's not watching a lick of golf, so she's not going on Sunday.
I plan to not watch the golf. On Saturday, we're doing a party bus to and fro, which is a good idea because parking there and just trying to get an Uber there is absolutely impossible because it's just out on a golf course and you just can't transport yourself. So we're going on a little party bus and hopefully we all end up back on it.
I like that outside the box thinking. You're like, listen, Uber's too expensive.
Yep.
Can't get a cab.
It's probably the same price to do a party bus versus an Uber out there,
and way more fun, right?
Yeah,
I
true.
mean, that's the way to go. I like the outside the box. I thought maybe you were going to have like one of the Hummer limos or something come pick you up.
That'd be sweet.
But listen, party bus is pretty good. That's pretty good. So I know that Andrew wanted to make some picks with the Waste Management Open, which is it's funny. There's a Waste Management truck that just drove by. That's some product placement
Are we sponsored?
here. You can't see it, but I can.
No free plugs.
No free shout outs.
So Andrew is the biggest golf guy here. Anna, as she mentioned, not going to watch any golf.
No,
we're going to make picks
interested.
anyway. I'm probably going to follow along on the internet like I tend to do for these things. Because, listen, there's too much college basketball. There's Super Bowl. I got a lot going on this time of year, Andrew. But I do want to make some picks. So here's the rules. We're taking 3 total golfers, right, Andrew?
Yep.
3 total. One has to be at least plus 4,000 for our sleeper. And then the other 2 can be anybody we want. Right? So, Andrew, do you want to let's do this like snake draft style?
Yes. And so I just did a list randomizer. And since I'm away and I got picked as number 1, you guys weren't going to believe me. So I chose to run it back. And now I'm the 3rd pick and Ravi's the 1st pick.
Okay.
So for the sake of my just so I don't have to hear the headache from you two back in Omaha, I chose to get the 3rd pick here.
You're so gracious.
What a guy. What a guy. All right. So
You guys wouldn't have believed me anyway.
Listen, my number 1 pick. I'm not gonna overthink this. My guy Scotty Scheffler has the best odds. I've got him at plus 500. Listen, I'm gonna go with the number. Listen, don't overthink. I'm talking to you, Andrew, Bears fan over here. Don't overthink Caleb Williams. All right, make the pick. I'm taking Scotty Scheffler, number 1.
Yeah, Scheffler eyeing a 3-peat. He's looking to become the first PGA player to complete a 3-peat since Steve Stricker at the 2011 John Deere Classic. He's one of the more consistent golfers. I mean, he tied for 5th, tied for 17th, tied for 6th so far in 2024. His ball striking numbers are just absolutely unmatched. And he's not traditionally a good putter, but it served him well at TPC Scottsdale. And if he has an average or better week, he's got a great chance of winning.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to talk about his ball striking numbers, but I didn't get to it. I didn't want to take too much time. So Anna's
Anna.
right?
All right, yeah. I'm going to go Jordan Spieth.
Oh, you son of a gun. Spieth posted 12 top 10 finishes and 3 top 3 finishes since his last win in 2022. He actually gained 3.4 strokes from tee to green in 2 rounds at Pebble Beach last week. And, the most impressive part about his course history is the fact that he's gained over 6 strokes at this event. So Spieth plays really well at the Waste Management. I will take the red hot. I will take the red hot Justin Thomas.
Ooh, okay.
He smashed in between. Look, it's the season of the bounce back for Justin Thomas.
I love it.
He's still looking for that first win since 2022, but he tied for 6th and marked his 5th straight finish of 6th or better dating back to September. He's playing some great golf. I am taking Dr. JT. Now I get
another one.
picks, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Snake drafting. You got it.
So I love the way, and I really wanted to go Wyndham Clark here because I think momentum is huge in golf, but I'm going to go with Benny On.
Ooh, okay.
5 previous starts at the Waste Management, owns 2 top 10s, 4 top 25s, never fails to break 70 in his 10 Thursday, Friday rounds. He's made 5 cuts and 5 trips, finishes well at this event. I'm going with Benny.
So what are his odds? I don't see him.
He should be 2,800.
Yep.
If I remember correctly.
Plus 2,800.
Okay, there we go. All right. So
let me document this real fast because I got to make sure we know.
Yeah, we got.
Are you putting bets in for me?
We got to find.
Yeah, I believe you can bet in Arizona, can't you?
I can. Yeah.
You got it covered over there. All right. So Andrew's writing these down so we can figure out who the winner is on Monday. I'm gonna go because I get one more under 4,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is correct. Or you can go above just because you want to.
I want to go Max Homa here.
Ooh, I believe he's the 3rd best odds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I've got
Plus
him at.
1,800.
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot on Max Homa. I just know that he's been playing really good golf too as of late. And he, at least on the back end of last year, he was playing some of his best golf. So I think the odds makers are respecting him.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know. I mean, listen, I don't dive into the numbers and stuff like you do, but he's a guy that's been playing well. As you mentioned, last year he was playing some of his best golf. I think they're expecting that to carry over. All right, 2nd round pick, hurry.
Sam Burns.
I love it.
We got 20 seconds. Lightning round sleepers.
Lightning round. Go ahead.
I've got Adam Scott.
All right, Anna, go ahead. I'll pick last.
Alex Noren.
And I'm going with Thomas Detry.
Ooh.
There we go. Mark it down. Coming up next, it's my favorite time of the week. It's time for trivia.
Time to get beat.
I'm talking trash this time. All right, we'll see how it goes. Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Another made-up weather phenomenon, thunder snow. It just came out of nowhere one year. It didn't exist.
Thunder snow is real.
No, that's the thing. That's what I mean, though. They're all real, but you never hear about them until they're like, oh, this thing happened that we didn't have a name for. Let's make it up. It's a Pineapple Express.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's what I mean. Like they make up the names is what I mean. I do understand the
thunder
real.
Snow is an awesome term.
It is a terrific. So is Frostquake, right? Great term.
Frostquake. Yeah.
They absolutely made it up because they didn't know what else to call it.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
I think they're all backyard baseball team names. Like
True.
Names that they throw in.
Snowquakes.
Frostquake absolutely sounds like a
fair weather Frostquakes.
It sounds like a Japanese league team. Like they have some crazy names in some of the Asian leagues in their baseball leagues. I think maybe we could get some Frostquakes going on over there.
You're just a member of the terrific Thunder Snows.
Well, I hope I survive the Pineapple Express. I'll let you guys know what happens.
I do. You could do some minor league names too, like Trenton Thunder Snow. That'd be a great name.
Yeah. You know what? Let's just make all of these weather events into AAA baseball names. Let's just do it. Let's do it right now. We'll create our own league.
Ken says Frostquake sounds like a DQ treat. Hey, not wrong.
That's
not wrong.
So true.
You know what it is time though, and I hope I'm not wrong. Is it time for trivia? Andrew, I'm going to let you take over. Cam, you haven't done this before. When Andrew tells you, you have to come get me because I have to leave the room. Okay? So much like you had to go get the mail here a second ago in the last segment.
I'll get you some coffee while I'm out there too. Yeah, I'm just.
You have to come get me when Andrew gives you the go ahead. So I am piecing out so I can win this legitimately and without my integrity questioned here. So sure. Anna, good luck, and I'll be back in a minute.
See how Anna's feeling today about his trivia questions.
I feel pretty good. How are you feeling today, Anna?
I don't know. I don't really know if you're feeling nice today. And if it's all about golf, I'm screwed.
It's not all about golf.
Okay,
it's
good.
Not. Cam, do you possibly have, and it's okay if you don't, the game show music that Shane plays to be underneath this segment?
No.
All right.
You have to sing.
That's okay. Yeah. Yeah, Cam.
Lightly in the background.
Yeah, Cam, give me a nice instrumental, if you don't mind. Okay, question number 1, Anna. Has he left the room? Is he gone?
Yeah, he's gone.
Okay. What company has spent the most money all time on Super Bowl commercials? Is it Pepsi, Coke, or Budweiser?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. All time, I'm going to say Coke.
Question number 2. Who's the most recent golfer to tie the course record at the Waste Management Open?
Oh,
Is it Phil Mickelson, Ricky Fowler, or Scotty Scheffler?
Scotty Scheffler.
And question number 3. How much does the Lombardi Trophy weigh? Is it 7 pounds, 9 pounds, or 11 pounds?
Those guys, I mean, they're very strong, but they are lifting up with one hand with ease after a ball game, so you might be a little tired. I'm going to go 9.
And the tiebreaker question, I don't know how into music you are, but in honor of the late, great Toby Keith, tell me how many number 1 hits he had in his lifetime.
Oh, my gosh. How much is even normal?
I don't know. I just know the answer.
How many number 1 hits? Okay, I'm going to go 12.
All right. Thank you, Anna. We got to go get Cam. Or Cam, he's got to go get Ravi.
He's on it.
Oh, nice.
Ravi's trotting back. He's actually running.
How are you feeling, Anna?
Pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good.
Okay, pretty good. I love to hear it. Ravi. Nope, not yet.
All right, my guy. What do we got?
All right, Ravi, you ready to go?
Always. Let's do this.
Hey, Ravi, what company has spent the most money all time on Super Bowl commercials?
Ooh. I don't want to use my multiple choice this early. My gut says Budweiser.
So is that what you're going with?
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know if you were still talking through the answer or not.
Nope. No, I know. That's
my
fair.
gut says Budweiser, period.
That I understand.
No other thought.
That's a little confusing, like with my Minnesota Vikings, rabbit trick I did last week.
That was crazy.
I'm not really sure how you pulled that out of your keys.
Yeah, I think we're gonna go Budweiser.
All right. Question number 2. Who's the most recent golfer to tie the course record at the Waste Management Open?
Ooh, okay. This is gonna be tough because I'm not a big golf guy. I'm gonna ask for some options here.
Is it Phil Mickelson, Ricky Fowler, or Scotty Scheffler?
Listen, you just told me that Scheffler's going for the 3-peat. I'm gonna go with my guy Scotty.
And question number 3, how much does the Lombardi Trophy weigh?
Oh, that one's tough. Doesn't look that heavy. They kind of do the one-arm thing pretty easily. It's not like the baseball trophy looks really heavy when they the World Series trophy.
I know what you're saying.
Because they kind of both hands it. Maybe it's just awkward. I'm not sure. I'm gonna say 21 pounds.
And the tiebreaker question, in honor of the late, great Toby Keith, tell me how many number 1 hits he had in his lifetime.
You're hitting me with golf and country music, man. Like, I really feel like you're working against me.
This was targeting.
It was. I feel.
I haven't seen a flag.
I feel like this is targeting. We're gonna throw Andrew out of the game. He's gonna miss the next half. No. Number 1 hits. So this is like just on the country charts, I'm assuming. Do we know where is this coming from?
I just looked up number 1 hits by Toby Keith and got the number.
All right. Well, that doesn't help me at all. I knew I should have saved. I knew I should have saved my. Although this is the tiebreaker, so
tiebreaker. So it's just closest to.
All right. I'm gonna go 7.
Thank you, Ravi. All right, let's go through the.
I don't feel good. I don't feel good about
I
this.
I kind of feel good now.
I feel terrible.
This might be my first W.
It might be. This is not my sweet spot.
This is good. I like to challenge Ravi on a variety of days. Okay, question number 1. What company has spent the most money all time on Super Bowl commercials? Anna, you said Coke. Ravi, you said Budweiser. The answer is Budweiser.
Let's
Dang it.
go.
I was thinking like back in the day,
Ooh.
maybe they didn't allow the alcohol ads or something. So
You also have to remember, though, the money has gotten more, like the spots have gotten more expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
So that probably weighs out the longevity, too.
That's fair.
Question number 2, who's the most recent golfer to tie the course record at the Waste Management Open? You both said Scotty Scheffler. You both are incorrect.
Oh, no.
Is it Ricky?
It is Phil Mickelson.
Oh, Phil.
Come on, Phil.
I think the course record's like minus 28 too. It's insanely
It's aggressive. It's an it's an aggressive course record.
And question number 3, how much does the Lombardi Trophy weigh? Ravi, you said 21 pounds. Anna, you said 9 pounds. The answer is 7 pounds.
Oh, dang.
So I win that one.
7 pounds.
All right, so we're tied.
So no, Ravi, you took it home. 1-0.
I know. I got it
we
wrong.
both missed.
It wasn't
we
close
both
too.
missed. Yeah, I forgot that was the tiebreaker.
Yep. And the tiebreaker question: how many hits did Toby Keith have? The answer is 20. So Anna, you would have had him on the tiebreaker because you said 12.
That's all right, though.
Now, Amazing Daniel did say in the chat, and like I said, I just looked up how many number 1 hits did he have, and 20 was the answer I found, because he said the overall charts and country charts are significantly different. And I'm not arguing that at all. I just don't know the actual number.
So 20 is the country chart number.
Okay.
Well, I don't think he would give the question if it was going to be 0, like on the actual top 100 charts. So I was like, I got to go a high number then.
Yeah, that's fair. No, that makes
so
sense.
I kind of thought country.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't even know. I can't even find if he had any overall number 1s, but
I doubt it. I highly doubt it.
Listen, that's all right though. I still got the W. That's all we needed here.
Anna, I had one, okay, and Ravi and I talked about this earlier on in the show, and I was going to give you a Royals bunny question, but I chose against it because it's Super Bowl week. But could you have told me who was the highest paid Royal in 2015?
Oh, in 2015? Okay. Eric Hosmer?
It was Alex Gordon.
Oh, Alex Gordon.
I got that one too. So
he had a higher salary than Eric.
He did. Eric Hosmer. Okay.
Was he still on? He was still on early money at that point, wasn't he?
He was still on early money.
He might have been still on his rookie.
Yeah. It might have been arbitration.
Yeah, I should have said Alex. That's my guy.
See, I would have got that one too.
But Eric Hosmer ended up getting paid wherever he went. So.
Yeah, San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego paid him.
San Diego, he got paid.
Yeah, so Hosmer got paid, drum roll please, $5.6 million that year.
Yeah, so that's an arbitration number. That's got to be an arbitration number. That is
Bobby Wood Jr. just got paid.
He did just.
And that's why I was going to bring it up.
That's why we were talking about. How you feeling? You feel good
about
about Bobby Witt?
Oh my gosh, Bobby Wood Jr. is one of my favorite people ever. Just from knowing him in Omaha and working with the Storm Chasers, like he is just goes about his work the same every single day. He's so humble, and he just doesn't really take it for granted. Like he's still a kid out there playing, and I don't know. I'm just so happy to see him get what he deserves, and I'm really glad the Royals are putting in that money.
I was gonna say that's the more shocking part, right? Not that he earned the contract, but the Royals actually paid it. True or false? We've got about 30 seconds here. Bobby Witt Jr. would be a more appropriate name for a NASCAR racer.
Yeah.
Like every time I hear Bobby, every time it's probably because of Ricky Bobby, right? But Bobby Witt Jr. sounds like a classic, like out of central casting NASCAR
He's a Southern
driver.
boy too.
See, it makes sense. He'll have the little drawl and everything, but he is going to have a nice draw on his bank account. He's getting about $26 million a year. Good for Bobby Witt Jr. Anna Bellinghausen, thank you so much for joining us. Have fun at the Waste Management Open. And I will be back tomorrow here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.